Mark Wanacre, probably look more like a typical married man than most guys are willing to admit. Although I love my wife and children, I can't help but fantasize about using another woman. I don't think I'm any different from the average man, because only 1 in 6 doesn't think the same thing. While I fantasized about using another woman, it wasn't something I seriously wanted to do. Well, yes, I don't have the nerve to openly seek out other women. My ideal woman should be really hot, even hotter than the 5 foot 4 inches, 1.6 meters, 120 pounds, 54 kilograms at my disposal. She's beautiful, kind, but the hot-tempered wife Veronica, who most guys would rate at about 9.5 points on a 10-point scale. Yes, and the ideal woman should be careful, because I'm not going to ruin my life. I was completely uninterested in the flirtatious 20-year-old girls in my office, not only because they were too young and intemperate, but also because I believed in the truth of the proverb, "Don't shit where you eat." Alas, its truth was later fully confirmed. So, despite the fact that I've been fantasizing since I was 30 or 35, I never thought that I would succeed. Then, that's what happened. I had a rare work trip to meet with a group of people involved in about the same business as me, even though we were not competitors. In fact, it was a seminar for 3 days, 2 nights, in a city 200 miles from my house, not too far to come to the seminar, but certainly too far to return home for the night. At the seminar, I met many good, intelligent, and helpful people. Yes, one woman turned out to be very hot. Her name was Jillian Morse. She looked to be about 30, but during the conversation it became clear that she seemed to be 38 or 40 years old. She was by far the most beautiful woman of that age that I have ever had direct contact with. Jillian had an interesting past. She started working in an ambulance right out of high school and didn't go to college until she was 21 and graduated 3 years later with a degree in business, as well as other medical science courses, which were easy for her because of her experience working in an ambulance. Jillian and I seemed to really get along. We had a great conversation on the first day and evening of the seminar, and on the second morning we met for a morning workout in the hotel gym. She showed me how slim and athletic she is. I showed her how strong I am. Indeed, my height is 6 feet 4 inches, 1.93 meters. I weigh 230 pounds, 104 kilograms. I can do push-ups on the floor many times, and I can squeeze 50 pounds, 23 kilograms, with one hand. When we had breakfast together after training, our knees, hands, and forearms often seemed to inadvertently touch each other. By the time an impromptu party was held after dinner on the second evening, I was convinced that Jillian was not only a little more beautiful than Veronica, but she was also much taller. She was 6 feet, 1.8 meters, than Veronica. Using her would be a completely different experience. What was also clear was that she showed the same interest in me as I did in her, and that the only thing holding us back was how much we trusted each other, that our partner would remain sufficiently secretive. Jillian, as I found out later, had a dry period in her personal life due to her husband's temporary illness. So, at an impromptu party, she lured me to a secluded corner. Neither of us drank alcohol, which made our frankness even more surprising. "I'll be honest, Mark," she began. "It seems that we have a mutual attraction, but we are wary, since we have not known each other long and are worried about trusting each other, whether we are careful and circumspect enough." I stared into her enchanting aquamarine eyes for a long time before answering. "I couldn't have said it better. I love my husband and children, and I absolutely don't want to hurt or disappoint them," she continued. "I feel the same way about my wife and children," I replied sincerely. "Are you ready to take a chance with me? Do you think the reward will be worth the risk?" "Damn it, yes. How are we going to do this? Have you talked to your wife and children today?" "Yes, before dinner. And they forwarded my room phone to my cell phone. And you?" "Yes, I talked to my husband and children right after dinner." "So, none of our seminar participants are on my floor," she smiled. "Why don't I wander around for 15 minutes after the party and then go up to my room 710? After that, you walk around for another 15 minutes and then go up the stairs to my room and knock softly 4 times and twice hard." "I'll see you in half an hour after the party," I replied, squeezing her hand. Jillian and I did exactly as we had planned. And indeed, we no longer talked to each other during the party and even flirted with other participants in the seminar. We tore each other apart as we stumbled into the bathroom. Fortunately, Jillian's room was top class because the shower stall was bigger than my room, which gave us enough space to work on each other in the shower. Jillian obviously liked it when, after we dried off, I picked her up, carried her into the bedroom, and put her on the bed. "I'm too big. I'm not usually treated like that," she giggled. Fortunately, our last seminar started at 10 a.m., so at 8:30 a.m. we didn't want to get out of bed. Jillian said with a devilish grin, "Okay, let's get ready for training." "God, Jillian," I said. "What's the gym got to do with it, asshole?" She grinned. "I'm sure we can burn more calories in bed than in the gym." I got dressed, slipped out the door, and went down the stairs to my room. She came to the seminar on time. I was only 2 minutes late. At lunchtime, we decided it was better to keep separate, as we didn't want to get the same looks. But she asked for a ride home. She lived just 10 miles from my house in the same metropolitan area. I readily agreed. We left the hotel and drove back. For the first half hour, we chatted about how much fun we had and how wonderful our sexual intercourse was. Then we both admitted that as the glow from our gymnastics began to fade, we would probably both feel guilty. "I've never cheated on Paul before," she sighed an hour later. "So am I to Veronica," I replied. "Although I know I'm going to feel guilty, I'm just going to try to be an even better husband and father," I smiled. "And I'm sure as hell I'll never regret making love to you." As I said before, it was supernatural. Jillian thought for a couple of minutes. What a good way of looking at things. "I'm using this experience to become a better wife and mother too," she smiled. Then we changed the subject and talked about the many common interests we had. On the way home, we stopped for a fast food snack. So when we pulled up to Jillian's house, it was about 8:50 and it was dark. In the area where she lived, the houses were located very far from each other. When I pulled over to the curb in front of her house behind an old blue pickup truck, she gasped. "My front door is open, and I recognize this truck. It looks like he's been exploring the area." "Call 911, I said, getting out of the car and heading for the house. "Be careful," she moaned. When I got to the front door, I literally bumped into the guy who was carrying the TV. He had a ski mask on his face. I grabbed him by the neck and slammed his head against the wall twice, causing him to lose consciousness. I heard a voice in the house, so I ducked around the corner between the lobby and what appeared to be the living room. "You stupid bastard. How did you drop the TV?" I heard a voice say. "Oh shit, what happened to you?" I saw a second guy in a ski mask standing over the first guy, unconscious and with a gun in his near hand. When he turned to me, I hit him in the face with my right elbow, simultaneously grabbing his hand with the gun with my left, then hit him 3 more times before it became clear that he had passed out. Then I took the pistolet simple .38 caliber that I was familiar with and went further into the house. In the kitchen, I came across Paul tied to a chair, gagged and with bruises on his face. I untied his gag and whispered, "How many are there?" "2, he whispered back. Relieved, I took out a kitchen knife, cut its strings, and asked where the children were and if he was all right. "The kids are at a pajama party, and I'm not too badly hurt," he replied. Then he asked, "Who are you?" "Oh, I'm sorry," I muttered, clearly embarrassed. "My name is Mark Wanacre. I was at a seminar with Jillian. She didn't want to return on her flight because turbulence was predicted, and since I live only 10 miles away, I brought her home. When we saw the front door open, I went to check, and she called 911. After that, Paul came out to my car to hug Jillian. I stood guard over 2 villains who had just come to their senses, and the cops showed up. I put the gun on the floor before the cops entered the house. Paul had already told them the basic facts and that I was a good guy, so they didn't threaten me, although I still raised my hands and pointed at the .38 caliber pistol. By the time 4 more police officers arrived, the 2 villains had already been handcuffed and their ski masks removed. They were identified as 2 criminals with rape protocols a meter long. I called Veronica, told her the 2-minute version of the story, and told her that I needed to sign the protocol at the police station. She was worried about me, but I assured her that I was fine. After Paul, Jillian, and I made our statements at the police station, I apologized to Paul for the scoundrel dropping and smashing the TV. He laughed it off and thanked me for saving him. "I'm pretty sure they would have killed or maimed me before they left," he sighed. "They told me they were going to cut me into pieces after they took everything of value." When Paul left, she and I had 2 minutes alone. "Who would have thought that by making love to you, I would save my husband?" She chuckled. I think I won't feel so guilty in the end, she continued, planting a quick but passionate kiss on my lips. Maybe we can do it again, I grinned. Maybe, she said, thrusting a piece of paper with her mobile phone number into my hand. Veronica and the children were very worried when I returned, and were glad when it turned out that I was all right. Veronica made me feel great riding me that night as a rider for the first time in my life. Two different and incredibly beautiful women rode me twice in one day. I went to bed with a big smile on my face, alternately thinking about using Jillian first and then Veronica. After the incident at the house, Paul insisted on inviting me and my family to a picnic. Jillian and I were both a little afraid that we could tell about our feelings for each other, but hoped that we could be secretive. Yes, and if our families get together, we may have a built-in excuse if we somehow slip up and get caught together in the future. That's why we took it up with enthusiasm. The picnic was great. Jillian and Veronica seemed to get along well. Paul was a steady guy, and our kids were about the same age and seemed to enjoy the company too. There were only two minor glitches. My 7-year-old boy, who looks almost like my clone and is big for his age, quickly fell in love with Jillian's 8-year-old daughter, who is almost her clone. Well, on the way home, Veronica noticed in an unreadable manner. I didn't know Jillian was so hot. You never mentioned it. It's a bit of a sticky hint, but nothing else was said about it. Despite our obvious physical attraction to each other, Jillian and I were extremely careful about arranging new interludes. Both of our jobs were difficult, and our offices were 15 miles apart, and combined with the obligations to our families, we didn't have much free time. We didn't do working late, or girls' or boys' parties. However, when we did get together, it was magical, partly as a game, and partly to alleviate our guilt. A week after each of our interludes, we compiled a list of all the things we additionally did that week for our spouse and children to make their lives better. Each time, we tried to assess as objectively as possible which of us did the best job, and the other sent the winner $25. Only once out of 5 interludes were we both unhappy with ourselves. This game and the fact that our lives with our spouses seemed to have really improved, especially the attention we gave them, really helped alleviate our guilt. Jillian and I lived for 6 weeks. We met at an event that both families bought tickets to, which made my son very happy to see Jillian's daughter again, and after that we became a little careless. Veronica was away all day due to important meetings at work. The kids were at school, and in the morning Jillian was visiting a client just a mile from my house. So we met around 11 a.m. in the guest room at my house. It was the first time we allowed ourselves to meet in one of our houses. I declined the call because it wasn't important, but for some reason, perhaps out of paranoia, I switched to the Find Phone screen to find out the location of Veronica's phone. To my horror, I saw that it was only 2 miles from our house. Without taking a shower, Jillian and I dressed quickly. Since her car was parked right in front of our house, there was no way she could get out or hide. So we quickly took out cans of soda and sat far apart in the living room, chatting amicably when Veronica came in. When we saw Veronica, we were horrified. She looked like a ghost. I jumped up, grabbed her and asked, "What's wrong, honey?" She mumbled something unintelligible and then collapsed. Jillian immediately got down to business, drawing on her experience working in the ambulance. While working on Veronica, she told me to call 911. After I called, I rushed back to Jillian and Veronica, and Jillian threw me her car keys and shouted, "Take the pharmacy bag from the front passenger seat and bring it here, quickly. If there is a record in the 30-meter run, then I have broken it." There were 2 prescription bags, so I brought them both. Jillian chose one, told me to open it, and take the device out of the package. I later found out that it was a bronchodilator of the type that Paul used for emergency asthma attacks. I quickly handed it to Jillian, and she got to work pumping the sprayed liquid into Veronica's airway. The ambulance arrived there 3 or 4 minutes later. By that time, it seemed that Veronica would survive, but we weren't sure. Jillian told the ambulance drivers what she had done and her opinion of the problem. They gave Veronica an adrenaline shot and then took her away. "You're going to pick her up at the hospital in your car, and I'll clean up here and upstairs," Jillian told me quietly. I thanked Jillian warmly, got into my car, and followed the ambulance. I canceled all appointments for the rest of the day and called my mom to pick up the kids from school, as I intended to stay in the hospital. Fortunately, by 6 o'clock in the evening, Veronica not only felt better, but she also looked good. Despite the fact that she could have returned home, the doctor recommended staying the night, and we decided that it was for the best. The doctor told us that if Jillian had not done everything necessary, Veronica would have died from an allergen that had not yet been determined by that time. After a few days, everything returned to normal, and Veronica not only did not experience any long-term effects, but also seemed more energetic than ever. We found out that she was gradually developing a reaction to some substance from the environment in the office building. I can't pronounce the name or spell it correctly. She received a large dose the day she almost died, and barely made it home. She should have gone to the hospital. Her entire small office building was subsequently treated, and all traces of the substance were removed to avoid a repeat. Veronica insisted that we invite Paul and Jillian to a picnic as a thank you, just like it was when I kind of saved Paul's life. Of course, my son was delighted to see his girlfriend again. Just like last time, everyone really liked it, and Veronica gave Jillian a necklace with a gold-plated inscription, Lifeguard. When everyone was leaving, Veronica hugged Jillian tightly and whispered something in her ear. When they broke off their embrace, Veronica immediately hugged Jillian's children, but I saw the look of shock on Jillian's face before she regained her composure. Our picnic was on Saturday. On Monday, Jillian called me at work. She wasn't as chatty as usual, but on the contrary, quite serious. Do you remember how you said that you were confused why Veronica never really asked you about why I was at your house that day? Yes, I wondered why she accepted my words without further comment that we were just planning a surprise party for Paul, I replied cautiously. Well, did you notice my shocked reaction when Veronica hugged me goodbye on Saturday? Yes, of course. What did she say? Veronica said, "Thank you again for saving my life. Thanks to that, you have a past this time. But if you ever make love to my husband again, no one will be able to save you." Jillian gasped. That was the end of my happy romance with Jillian. Of course, it was a happy accident, because she definitely saved my wife's life, and I probably saved her husband from death or injury. Afterwards, I often thought about Jillian. My memories were always pleasant, but Veronica made sure that I was constantly satisfied. However, I never cheated again, and I think Veronica trusts me now. We see Paul and Jillian all the time, and we'll be seeing each other for many years to come. Why? Because 15 years after I met Jillian, my son married her daughter, so now we're related. It just happened.